Welcome. Today we're going to answer a very popular question, which is why should we feed our cats a raw diet? And it's a very popular question, and we're going to stay and tell all that is to know about it. My name is Amaya Espíndola, and I am a MRCVS cat and nutrition specialist holistic vet. Stay tuned and get the whole picture. So first of all, we need to look at the cat's physiology, and it's pretty obvious, and we can tell that the cat is an obligate carnivore, which means they have. If we start looking at the whole body of the cat, the digestive system, we can tell that there are specific things that is always telling us that they are meant to be eating meat. The first is the mouth. They have very pronounced canines made for ripping and tearing meat, and little limited grinding surfaces for processing plant material. That's very important. That's the first indication. The second thing is that their stomach is very acidic, which means that they are able to break down the proteins and make them very digestible, bioavailable in the intestines. And then if we look at the rest of the digestive system, it's very efficient, very short and efficient to destroy proteins and absorb them. There is nothing special or particular like you can see in other species, such herbivores, where they need a bigger, large intestine to process plant material. You'll see that the teeth are different. Everything is different. So when we talk about cats, we are talking about obligate carnivores. And yes, and you may question yourself, which is really good if you do, that we talk about that it's a concern that proteins are something that we are told about. Oh, proteins in cat, that might be difficult or bad in some point. Well, it's not about exactly the proteins, because they are designed to do that, but instead of the quality of those proteins that we are feeding. And that is much more important, because if you feed the protein as a whole, as it comes in nature, the body is able to recognize it. Of course, there are individual cases where inflammation it's already set in, and of course we may need to make some adjustments. But in the normal set of things, cats are able and very efficient to digest proteins. On the other hand, they are very inefficient processing carbohydrates. They have very limited capacity to do so. So there is no nutritional requirement for cats to eat carbohydrates. And this is very important, because sometimes in most of the processed foods, we are overdoing it. We're giving more than they actually need or even tolerate to process. And yes, they can survive this in time, but there are going to be consequences, and especially those silent consequences, which is the low-grade inflammation, that at a certain point, it will stop being low. If we give the cat a choice, they will never choose carbohydrates as a primary source of energy. They may choose and select a little bit of what it's, if we are mimicking the prey they would eat, they have the intestinal content. They've already fermented and broken down the fiber that it's already there, and that it's useful, and it can be very beneficial for cats, but it's just a small amount. And even so, if you use connective tissue, fur, or any other thing that comes from an animal source as a fiber, it can be actually much better than using plant fiber. It depends on the cat, it depends on the individual. Both are okay, but just to get you that clear, it's just a little bit comparing to all the rest of the meat and organs and everything else that you will be feeding your cat. You will also find that some cats will struggle with raw diet, but that means that maybe your cat has a low-grade inflammation process going around, and it's very silent, and they're not always going to be able to tell. We have our cats already sick, to say in a certain way. The cat's already been eating some other foods. There are some chronic inflammation going underneath, and maybe your cat will struggle with raw food. But don't worry, then you can do some adjustments and you can go to slightly cooked food with no problem. The thing is that you respect what is a species appropriate diet, which is based on meat. Last but not least, also cats have specific nutritional requirements such as taurine, arginine, Purrform vitamin A, arachidonic acid, among others, that come specifically in animal tissue, and they can absorb it directly from there. So if we look at the full biology of cats, the foundation, it's pretty much obvious that it makes sense to feed a raw diet. It's easier for them. Of course, there are going to be other challenges, such as transitioning and other things. But that doesn't mean that their physiology is telling us that they should be fed a high carbohydrate diet. There is no indication for that whatsoever. One of the most significant changes that we will find is hydration. You will find that the cat's elasticity, the skin, it's much more elastic. And you will say, yes, but it's already like that. But when you compare a cat that has been eating ultra processed foods, you will see that they are chronically dehydrated, and we have normalized that because you can tell the difference. Most of the time, that elasticity that you will find on the skin of a cat that it's been fed raw, it's very flexible, like nourished from within. It's that feeling that the skin can actually be detached from the rest of the body. It's so flexible, so moist, and so nourished that you can tell by looking at the fur, looking at the overall flexibility, shine of the fur. Everything looks better. Especially you can tell in black cats because they start like shining around. And this is very important because the skin is a reflection of what's going on in the intestines, which you can tell the benefits from within are also happening. And we have to also have in consideration that cats are desert animals, and as such they are not prone to drink a lot of water. Their water intake is very small, and actually it is much better when that water comes in the prey already as the natural form that it should be, the prey, because otherwise that water can be drained away into the intestines, like washing everything but not actually absorbing it. And this is very important. The cats get better water intake and inside their body if it comes with the muscle meat and everything as the prey is. There is another thing about hydration that not many people talk about, but we need water to make our brains function better. That cognitive behavior, that nervous regulation systems, everything works better if we have a good intake of water. And raw diets give that. Raw diets allow the cat to get the water in the best possible way, absorb and integrate it into their food. And that means that it may reduce anxiety, it may reduce any other sorts of behavior. So the benefits are not just physical, they can be also emotional. Looking at the digestive system, we can tell that cats they do better on raw food because the stools are smaller, firmer, and they are less odorous. They are less prone to have a low-grade chronic inflammation, and also reduces the amount of visceral fat a cat may have around its belly. Cats should never have fat around its belly. Well, nobody should, but anyway, that happens into cats. Those cats are more prone to any liver issues, problems with obesity, diabetes. All those things come from the accumulation of visceral fat. By offering a raw diet, that is reduced, and instead you will get a firmer and very thick and good muscle mass on the hind limbs especially. And what is the benefit of that? Is that with aging, and we all know now it's very popular to learn that we need muscle mass when we are aging, it's important for cats as well, because they will be losing muscle meat when they are aging. So it's important to keep that offer of good quality proteins in their diet, so they can keep it built and keep healthy and have longer and happy life. Another point into benefit, but in behavior for cats, is the fact of using raw meaty bones. Of course, not all cats will ever have that willingness to actually eat raw meaty bones, but those who do, they are also benefiting from this biting, chewing, and using the movements of the jaw. They can clean the plaque. It has behavioral benefits, such as reducing stress and anxiety, because the cat is able to complete one of the most important motivations that they have, which is being a predator. And the last benefit that I wanted to mention today is the ingredients transparency. When you feed a raw diet, you know exactly what you're feeding. You can tell, you can make adjustments and make it for the individual. And that is a benefit nobody talks about, but it's one of the most important. You know what you're feeding, and you can make individual adjustments for every patient. When we talk about feeding a cat a balanced diet, we are talking about mimicking the typical prey animal that they will feed on. So what are we doing there? They are eating muscle meat, they are eating organs, they are eating connective tissue, fur that will work a little bit as fiber with the intestinal content that is there. We'll find, well, bones. I forgot about that. It's very important. And we're also going to be finding some trace minerals and other elements that will come from small structures in the prey. So if we're trying to mimic that, we cannot just feed chicken breast, because of course that will be incomplete. Or as a recommendation of many professionals, that would say, oh, a bland diet should be chicken and rice. That is not complete. That is not a good thing to offer a cat. So when we talk about balance, we talk about mimicking this prey animal and making adjustments according to the animal and according the type of meats that we are feeding. Because we are not feeding rats. There are some fortunate people that can do that, but some others we will have to stick with the normal human consumption meats, such as beef, turkey, chicken, lamb, and so on. So if you're feeding those, of course, we will have to make some adjustments in what type of organs, supplements that we have to add, and we make it a very good diet. And if you create variety over time, you will achieve a good and balanced diet. There is no complications there. It's very easy to adjust and make it simple, as long as, of course, your cat is healthy. When a cat has already a chronic inflamed issue or any sort of disease, of course, some adjustments will have to be made. But here we're talking about healthy cats. Once you understand this, once you understand what is the foundation of raw feeding for cats, you will make it very intuitive. You will understand very easily what is needed to be fed, because it's actually the easiest diet that you can make. If we talk about compared to dogs or other animals, they are very simple carnivore animals. The only difficulties that we have most of the time is that the cat is not willing always to eat the whole prey. But also, of course, there are options for that. But if you teach your cat to eat a very varied diet, you will see and find many benefits from it. So after explaining all these ideas of what is balanced, what are the ingredients that we should be feeding, what are the benefits, and what is the physiology of the cat, I still feel like I need to make it like a round thing, saying, okay, why it makes sense. Why it makes sense to feed a raw diet to your cat. And let me tell you something. In the human medicine, we are looking towards more natural foods that are integrated into our bodies easily, that our body is able to recognize, that is beneficial for our bodies. We're looking into ingredients that 50 years ago, we never thought about that. We were just eating whatever is there. And now we are looking into this. So today, that scientific research is also applicable to the science in animals. Of course, cats, they always go behind, and you will find a lot of more resources in dogs, and like 10 years later, you will find the same for cats. So it's best if we start doing some adjustments on our own, especially professionals that only work with cats, such as me. But this is what we have. But we need to reach other scientific approaches just to get an idea of why it makes sense. Especially, we cannot ignore the patterns that we are seeing in human medicine that are replicating on the cat's health. Obesity, diabetes, chronic inflammation, which is the worst one because it's very silent until it is not. And we can see that in humans, this was caused by ultra-processed foods. And now we're feeding ultra-processed foods to our cats, and this is also happening. So we can make that comparison. There's no, yes, we are omnivores and they are carnivores, but in the end, the metabolic small parts, they are the same. That physiology is not that different. So if we see the same health pattern happening in humans and in cats, then we are drawn to make a conclusion and, compare those things. Raw feeding makes sense because you are not processing the food at all. And you offer that food as a meal, and is the best, and it is very well recognized by the immune system as something, I know what you are and I know you're going to get inside. And why I'm saying this, it's because we sometimes overload that immune system by giving it things that it cannot recognize. And this, if you add to that chronic inflammation and microbiome disbalances, then it makes it really difficult for the immune system to work properly. When you offer a diet that it's easy to recognize, I know what to do because this cat is a carnivore, we can get it. The immune system acts as a surveillance system, and it allows the body to say, okay, this is good, this is bad. So if it works properly and your cat is healthy, is one of the best options. It reduces the overload of the immune system and the cause of most of the intolerances and allergies that we can see out there. It doesn't mean that it cannot happen, but it reduces the chances of that happening. On the other hand, the microbiome, we know, it's more varied when we feed raw diets. And this, we are finding out that varied microbiome is better, but there are still some studies, and this is on research still. But again, I always believe that if you have the intestines very well filled with different bacteria, different capacities of digesting different things and offering different metabolites, it should, and for me it is, in my opinion, it is very beneficial for the structure of the full intestines in cats and any species. And last, but again, since I am a passionate in behavior, I also want to tell you about this because not many people know about it. When you feed raw and you create this hunting behavior inside the house, let's say you play 10 minutes before feeding, every time you have a routine of playing, hunting, and feeding raw, especially if that raw is to chew, to tear, like a really good cat should be doing. Not all, they don't all do, but anyway, if that happens, they reduce the willing or the necessity of hunting outside. So when we talk about sustainability and environmental issues that we have because of cats, raw feeding also makes sense if you create a good routine and you teach your cat to eat properly. And these are all the benefits. I could be talking about this all day, about benefits, different things that I found out during my 15 years only working with cats. And I can tell you, it makes sense, is the best option. And if you can't manage to do that, of course, don't get obsessed with that. We can always improve your cat's bowl, but it may take us a bit of time sometimes. Anyway, thank you for watching until here, and I hope you like these videos. If you do, please comment, please share them. This information is free and for all of you. Thank you.